All week long, we've been talking about recharging me as a part of a couple of weeks of talking about things about what we do and how we do them, which really is a lot about our knowledge, experience, and perspective. And this week, we're talking about recharging, and we've already talked about our knowledge and our experience around it. Today, we're going to talk about a perspective around recharging. And I would imagine that your perspective around that has likely changed over time. There's probably was a time when you didn't feel like you need to, and then there were other times where you felt like you definitely had to. I think those are two unique things. So while you think about what your perspective is around recharging, we will be right back to have that discussion. All that and more on episode 945 of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote provides an opportunity for business owners and leaders to discover what is real for them and to be impacted by what is real for others. That is the Renegade way. Let's get real. We all face challenges and get stuck occasionally and are looking for an antidote. Each weekday, this show dives into a topic that may have you stuck, frustrated, and uncertain. Our goal is to share our value in an effort to help you find that one thing, the antidote to your challenges, so that you can get results and make more money. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom. Sorry, I had a little hiccup there. Literally a hiccup.
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well, thanks. Doing very well.
Did you have a good Wednesday when we didn't see each other or talk to each other? We had one brief discussion by Facebook Messenger. Pretty rare for us.
Yes. I enjoyed the day.
Okay, good. I know you had a nice meeting with the Renegade Success Network members. Wednesday afternoon check-in, check-up, where they update each other about where they are with things and talk about what they're trying to accomplish and gather support and encouragement. And boy, lots of celebrating of successes in that group these days, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the benefits of getting together as a group or having a group that you're a part of, where you can, because at the same time, we have shared in those check-in and check-ups the challenges that people have faced. And yesterday we were fortunate to hear a success story about one of our members who was our first member, I think, who is this year so far made more money than they made in the last 3 years combined.
Say that again.
They've made more money this year than they did in the 3 previous years combined, which is great. And I think a lot of that is the fact that they were surrounded by a community and then just got some feedback, some thoughts around how to take some next steps and just keep taking steps. And they have been an example of what happens when you take steps and you get results, and then you start to understand those results differently. So if that's something that you'd be thinking about, let us know. Let Bob and I know. We can tell you what the Renegade Success Network is all about, how it helps our members figure out how to find go from chaos and confusion to confidence and control.
I think it's also a really good example of recharging and the perspective. You know, what I find so you and I rotate each day, or I'm sorry, each week, each Wednesday. One of us typically does it. Next week, the other one of us leads it. And what I find of that when I lead it is people come in and it's a recharge moment. It's like, hey, here's where I am in my week. Here's where I am in my month. Here's where I am in my year. It doesn't matter. Here's where I am in just a career change. Here's where I am with this new initiative. And they sort of take stock and then they recharge. Okay, here's what I'm about to do next. And it shifts their perspective. And I know what's great about it is you and I also participate. In fact, one week I tried not to participate. And they're like, well, Bob, what about you? Where are you in your check-in, check-up? What are you celebrating this week? And I found that whole process really recharged me because my perspective shifted. One week I was describing something that I was kind of frustrated about, and one of the people said, "Well, am I misunderstanding this?" And they recast it in a different light, and my perspective immediately shifted. It's like, well, yeah, I guess you could say that. I'm like, well, if you can say that, doesn't that mean X? And if that means X, doesn't that mean you're closer to Y than you thought you were? And that perspective shift that came from someone else was something I don't think I could have done myself. Even though I was leading that meeting, I couldn't see my own issue. I couldn't change my perspective because I'm wrapped up in my own thoughts. I only see it. My perspective can be very narrow because I'm so busy getting stuff done. And I got to make sure I do this and I got to do that. I got to, this invoice has to go out and this has to come in. And money has to be where it needs to be at the right time to be able to pay all the bills and all. So I can't step back and go, oh, wait a second. These four things, when you connect them together, you actually are moving towards something you said that you wanted to achieve. And I think that's where the perspective, so often my perspective is wrapped up very tightly. And you do a really good job many mornings before and during the program, even after the program, saying, hey, whoa, hey, you said this thing. What if?
It's a lot about your perspective. It's like, here's Steven's comment that I want to throw up there. And I think he was talking about when I was saying that the person just kept taking steps. And Steve says baby steps is a misnomer. Yes. I don't know if it's a misnomer. I think all it is a judgment because baby is a judgment. Baby is we have anticipated results based on what we're going to do, the step we're going to take. And so we deem it as a baby step, small step, not really that significant is what you're kind of saying. And the challenge is that we don't know. We can't control the outcome of what that step might be, that it might end up being the most impactful step we ever take. Now, that is also an adjective, and yet I think I needed to use it to clarify it. As long as we don't let those words get too ingrained in our head, baby, that it's a baby step. It's just a step. And once we take it, we'll see what will happen after that. So I don't know if that means I was agreeing with you, Stephen, or not. It was just, I think, an opportunity to share the point about, the adjectives that we use. I think a lot of times put a perspective into our head that is limiting for us.
Well, and one of the things I think you and I have come to over our years working together on this is that it's the accumulation of all the steps. So what might be considered a wrong step, a bad step, a misstep doesn't exist in the way
you're talking about, Willis.
Well, but it doesn't really exist because all those things, even if you're going the wrong way on the road and you go, oh, wow, I've been going 3 miles the wrong way. When you turn around, you have a deeper understanding of, one, you're going on the road the way you want to go, and two, where that other path would take you. And it does inform you. The missteps that we take often informs us. What I'm going to use adjectives. You're on this big adjective thing. I'm not, because this would be a really lousy program if it was. So today we're going to talk about
the steps that we take and their impact. That's lousy.
Well, I would say the impact, when we define the impact, we're going to hit adjectives, but that's just me.
Maybe. We don't necessarily have to. Why do we have to define them with adjectives? Results. They're not good or bad results. They're just results. Because the results will change, which would mean that your adjective that you used at one point might no longer be true.
Potentially, yes.
And so why qualify it with an adjective?
So try to describe your day yesterday for me without using adjectives.
Yesterday, I worked on a number of things, including a lacrosse schedule for this weekend and for next weekend.
Okay.
I did some bookkeeping.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, I felt productive.
Okay.
Was that not a way to
I'm with
describe it?
Stephen, who says, "Don't be boring, Tom." And one of the things I would say is what I didn't hear in what you described was any kind of emotion. And I think
Okay.
emotion's a big part of what we do.
And it can be a big part of what holds us back. Imagine if I said, oh my gosh, my day was so frustrating. I spent all this time doing this one thing and I hate bookkeeping and it takes me so long to do and I'm not always clear on it. And then I had to stop and break because I had a meeting and it was a great meeting because I got to hear all these things. What does that do to my perspective? It influences how I go forward throughout the day. And I think what happens is when we let those words that we choose, those adjectives, influence us, it can get us stuck. That's, I think, the challenge. We get so wrapped up in the emotion that we can't see that the results that we got or the way things that we would describe things might change. Might look back and be like, hey, the one meeting I had, while it seemed like a waste of time yesterday, that person calls me tomorrow and says, hey, that was a really productive meeting. Thanks for taking the time. I took a look at your proposal and I think it's awesome and I want to move forward with it. I would have spent a whole however many hours from when that meeting ended until the follow-up came in, frustrated by the meeting that happened and trying to figure out what went wrong because I didn't think it was a productive meeting. Or I could have just been like, I had a meeting and I did the best I could. And now I'm just going to keep moving forward, trying to do the best I can and see what happens, knowing that the results might change, which I think allows me to keep taking steps. I think one of the things about our member who's had such success is they haven't gotten caught up in the ups and downs of things. They've taken it more at a what's real approach, and that has allowed them to keep taking steps, even though they probably in their heart of hearts want to judge and say, oh my God, that was awesome. And maybe even have used some of those words, yet haven't got caught up in the words. I think the emotions get us caught up in the words. And then it becomes easy to just get stuck and be like, well, I don't want to do that again because all that was frustrating all day yesterday.
So Stephen says, well, that's real. That's really realistic. Okay. I'm not sure if he's being sarcastic or accurate or facetious or straightforward. So I'm not, I'll leave that to you and him. He also said about a minute ago, interesting perspective.
I think it's all about your perspective.
Doesn't that make us robots? If we don't have emotions, human beings are full of emotion. Can't take that away. Stephen says, by the way, straightforward.
I think that there's nothing wrong with emotion as long as you're not stuck in emotion. And I think we let the adjectives that we use keep us stuck in emotion rather than enjoy the emotion for the moment or deal with the emotion for the moment, have the emotion, and then move on.
So how long can I have that emotion?
I think that depends on you. As long as you choose that you are going to stop. So yesterday in one of our calls, one of our members, I think I can share this, couldn't find a document that they were looking for, and they were getting frustrated. They even said that. Okay. They were frustrated. And what I shared is like, okay, you can do a couple of things. You could just be frustrated and say, okay, I'm going to sit here for 5 minutes. I'm going to define how long I'm going to deal with this emotion before I'm going to move forward.
Okay.
So I suggested, I said, you could either do that, or you could keep looking for another, whatever the time frame is that you feel is appropriate, so long as you set that time frame, and then when the time is up, you move forward and go back and recreate it, the document. And I think that's when we are able to determine for how long we will allow ourselves to be in the emotion. Because I agree, there's nothing necessarily invaluable or unvaluable about emotions. It's when they linger, and we allow them to linger. When we choose to move past whatever the emotion is, now we're able to keep moving forward and we don't get stuck in it. So yeah, if you close a big deal, great. Say, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take 5 minutes right now and celebrate. And I'm going to call 3 people and tell them about this deal. And we are going to celebrate what we did. All for that. When the alarm goes off at 5 minutes, or after you've called the 3 people, we're going to move forward. And we're going to now start to think about, what did we learn from that action, so that we can then keep moving forward. And, because think about it. If you had something that went well and you wanted to celebrate it, how many people go on like 2-week celebration benders because they had success? And while they're doing that, they miss other opportunities because they're so caught up in how great that was. I got it all figured out now. That was the best sales call ever. And they get stuck in that.
So what you're saying, I'm trying to crystallize this. It's okay to have the emotions around the actions we take. It's just they can't define us, and they can't become a limiting factor, for want of a better phrase.
Yes.
So I had a great call today. Celebrate that for a little while and then move on. Not I had a great call today and let that guide me for the rest of my life.
Or take the rest of the week off.
Okay.
Because that call was so great, I don't need to make any more calls because I'm so good at it. All I need to do is pick up the phone one more time. I'm going to have another great call, and I'm going to get the same results.
Okay. What I thought you were saying, sorry, I've got a cat who's grabbing at stuff. Shock. What I thought you were saying was not to have any emotion at all.
No. Celebrations are all about emotions, and I'm all for celebrations. You just hit the mute button. Or your cat did. You're muted. There you go.
Cats.
Now, I'm not sure what that has to do with recharging. Although I think there is some perspective around, if we fall into this emotion, whatever it might be, and let's take it like a battery, it's positive or negative.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get too far into the negative or to the positive, we need to maybe recharge and bring back some of the other. I think that's the challenge, is we get so caught up in our emotions that it takes a lot out of us, and we need to, or we get stuck in it, and then we need to recharge it, sort of to like reset it. So that
I was going to say, that's what you're saying is really reset.
Yeah.
Rather than letting our perspective always guide us. So, I had a horrible day yesterday. It was a great meeting this morning. Ride that wave for a couple of minutes and then get back to, for want of a better word, homeostasis.
Well, I think before you do that, though, it's helpful to figure out how to learn from it, so that you are learning from your actions, not just reacting to the results that usually you can't control.
Okay, we've got a couple comments I'm going to throw in. Steven says that's a tough self-management skill. Useful, thanks. Edward says, he's back with us. Hey, Edward, haven't seen you in a little while. Try standing on the earth barefooted and ground yourself. And believe it or not, there's something to this. I'm fascinated when I go out and actually put my feet on, like take my shoes off, socks off, put my feet on the ground, how it changes my perspective on so many things.
Well, because now you've been impacted by something else. You've had you've had a new experience or an experience that you've had before, and remember what the perspective was the last time you did it. And so obviously what's real for you is going to change, and that you started to see the value of doing that.
And Stephen says, thanks, Ed.
And, I would go back to the comment that you struggled to read from Stephen.
Thanks for bringing that back up.
It's, is it challenging? Yes. And I think you don't always have to be 100% successful at it to find value in it. Do I use adjectives when I'm not thinking about it? Yes. Do I try not to? Yes. Because it allows me to not get so wrapped up in the results that I can't control. And so, yeah, are we perfect? No, I think that's another word that I don't like to use, is perfect. Can we strive for perfection? Sure. And hey, I get caught up in emotion just like everybody else. When something doesn't go the way I thought it is, I had something happen earlier this year that didn't go the way I thought it is, and it has stuck with me for a long time. As much as I've tried to let it go, it's been challenging. And so, yeah, it happens. Because again, we're human and we're not perfect.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I really don't.
That's okay. It's just an example. Just saying that I too, as much as I talk about this and think about this and try to implement this in my life, it's hard.
Okay.
That's an adjective, though. It's challenging, which is an adjective.
There you go. You made my case. It's hard to get around it.
It is. And yet, how many people do you know who overuse adjectives? And once they start using one to describe something, how many times in a day do they say that?
Ed says, I don't know why I can't read today. All corporations should exercise this with their employees, time together being grounded.
Sure. Because then they can just focus on taking actions and not get all wrapped up in the judgment of the actions we take or the results that we get.
Okay. So, Tom.
Yes.
Do you have your one thing?
Well, I think I want to share something more on the topic, I think. Although I think that was on the topic.
Go ahead.
It's funny. I think that talking about recharging, I think based on, what's real for me has changed in that regard. I clearly remember a time in my life when I used the phrase, sleep is overrated. When I just thought that, okay, all I need to do, that I just can work and do whatever, and I don't need to recharge. And as my life has gone along, I have started to realize that might be one of the dumbest statements I ever used.
Wait, dumbest? I'm sorry, that'd be an adjective.
I know. I'm living in the emotion of, it was definitely the least valuable statement I ever said. And I'm starting to realize the value of and the necessity to do that.
To sleep.
To recharge. And sleep in that case, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the shifts I've had over the years. I used to really push hard, and now I try very hard at least one day each weekend to really get away from all of my work stuff and just be. It doesn't mean I don't do other things. I might clean my penthouse. I might go to the grocery store or take care of errands, but it's not work and it's not at the pace of the workday. In fact, I was saying on Sunday, I'm like, I don't really care what we do. I'm just enjoying being. And it was like, well, could you provide a little direction? I'm like, I'm really not trying to have direction today. I'm trying very hard to just go.
Just be.
And just be. Right. Which I find is difficult when there's a lot on my plate and when there's a lot of pressure to perform professionally. That recharge time on the weekend is really valuable to me. It's also, oddly enough, when most of my creativity comes out. The day after that recharging day tends to be a very productive day in the sense of, oh, that's an idea I didn't have. And it looks like Ed's got the same idea. Saturday is a day rest for him. And
for me.
What's that?
Depends on the time of the year. Saturdays can be not much rest.
Well, but you try to find other days.
Absolutely.
And Ed says it really makes a difference. And I think that's what we're really getting at is there's a perspective shift. When I get away from all the work pressure and thoughts and worries and concerns and things I have to do for a day, just one day, next day, my perspective is different. I appreciate where I am more, and I think I'm open to more ideas because they're not being clouded with the immediate task in front of me.
So all of your meetings with clients should be on Mondays then? Is that what you're saying?
No, I try to build Mondays to be the day where I need to do the most creative things. So the writing, some of the thinking, some of the planning things. But I do have meetings with clients on Mondays. Not a bad thing or good thing. It's just, that creates the distance helps me just. I see that I have more spring in my step on Mondays than other days a week. Like today's Thursday. I can feel it. I'm a little worn down by the week.
Okay.
Well, and that you hear people say that on Thursday and Friday. Oh, I was out to dinner last night, and the waitress came over and she's like, "Oh, happy Wednesday. We're halfway there."
Sure.
So that's not unusual. I see Michael's with us. He says, I force myself to sleep recharge at least twice a month, meaning a couch binge day. The other times it's go, go, go. Yeah, and it's funny how there are just days where I will sit. I've had plenty of Sundays where it's like football, NASCAR, more football.
Well, I think it's a lot about what's real for us, right? At one point in our lives, we didn't need that. We could go, go, go. And that was what was real. And I think there are other times when we realized that as we learned from those actions, that experience from that is, there is a limit to how much of that we can do and that we might need to do something different.
I think it also shifts as we get older.
Are you saying we're getting old?
No, I said getting older. I think you start to need more recoup time, more recharge time, or you start to value it more. And if you think of it,
it's like a chart. What is that called?
A bell curve.
How much do little kids sleep? They sleep a lot, so they're recharging a lot.
But they're also absorbing a great deal of information. Think about where you and I are in our careers. I couldn't have done this podcast in my 20s. It would have been very different. It would have been.
You could have done it. It would have just been different.
It wouldn't have been nearly as insightful as I think this can be because you and I have a lot of experience to leverage. And much of what you and I do in our careers now is drawn from the experiences we had helping other people benefit from those experiences. But when you're early in your career, when you're a kid, you're just absorbing and you're the worker bee.
It doesn't mean you don't have insight to share. It's just different insight.
And you're also doing. Your first job in your career, you're doing anything you can to feel valuable and to provide value. Now, you and I are at points in our careers where I think we know we have a value. It's a matter of how we choose to put that value in place in organizations versus us going to the job market saying, hey, I just got out of college. Please take me, mold me, show me how I can use all this education to benefit you. Now, if someone said, hey, I'd like you to go and write 20 newspaper articles a week for us and be out 3 to 5 nights a week and work 1 out of every 3 weekends, I'd be like, yeah, okay. How much are you paying for that experience? Because that's about $1 million you're going to need to give me for me to be engaged in that.
Oh, that's because, again, you've had that experience. Others might be still like, hey, I love that.
Yes.
What's real for them is different. They thrived. They felt like they thrived off of that. And so they continue to do it. And I think that's what happens is we all have knowledge and experience, and we leverage that to figure out what's our perspective around things. For you, you're like, yeah, I'm done with that. I don't need to do that anymore. Other people could be like, that's what drives
or
them.
I don't want to do that anymore.
Correct.
I could see a potential need. Ed says, I find that resting on Saturdays while everyone else is working, and Sundays being the first day of the week while everyone else is resting, I can focus more without Monday's busy interference from everyone else working also. Allows me to have a jump start on everyone else.
That's
so there's a perspective that Ed has there that works for him, which is great.
That's what's real for him. Correct. Doesn't mean that and other people could hear that and be like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I ought to consider that. And others be like, I could never do that, because they might not, just the way their schedule is. Their schedule is based on what they've experienced in the past. So do you have your one thing?
I think I do. I think when we talk about recharging ourselves and our perspective, one perspective I've come to over the years is the absolute need to actually take time to recharge and to do it more consciously. When I was younger, I would skip vacations. I get like 3 weeks a year. If I used 1 week, it was a big year. I wouldn't use my sick leave. I go to work sick. And as I've gotten older, I valued that, I've taken the conscious effort of, I need to get away. I need to literally not do work for 4 or 5 days and get out of that environment. And if the other shift in the perspective is, if things go haywire while I'm away, I'm not going to stop everything on vacation to worry about the things that go haywire. I'm better at planning, and I'm better at letting go because I've planned. So that's one of the keys, even in the day. It's like, okay, if you said to me, hey, Friday's a nice day, let's go play golf. I would work my workout so that you and I could go play golf, and I'm not going to be taking calls on the golf course. That is a shift, a recent shift.
Yes. Would you not be stressed that you're not working at the start of that morning?
Well, I think that's the perspective shift that I've got, that I'm still working through.
That's fair.
But I had someone who wanted to do something last night. They wanted to check in with me, and I was like, no, I got plans for the evening. You lose. It'll have to wait till Thursday morning. Sure enough, the world did not come to an end. Shocking.
For you. Are you sure it didn't for them?
They were fine this morning.
Okay.
Michael says, I love when Michael throws his one things in here, by the way. Thank you, Michael. My one thing is learning to listen to what your body is telling you and not necessarily to what's going on around you. Focus on yourself first. Ooh, I wish I'd thought of that. Because Michael, you got to text me these one things so I can use them as my own.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily be real for you.
That's a good one, though.
Focusing on yourself first is really focusing on what's real for you. That is unique from everyone else. And I think that's probably my thought, is that our perspective is all going to be based on our knowledge and our experience. And so what recharging me means is going to be unique for all of us, because we all have a unique perspective, because we've had unique experiences and knowledge. So I think I like Michael's point, focus on yourself first, which to me, I would say is focus on what's real for you. Don't worry about what's real for everyone else. Ed, has done that. He's figured out his plan for how he's going to recharge. We all need to do the same. Figure out what is a plan that it will work for us. We can take the value from others and say, that's interesting. Maybe I'll consider that. Try it, not judge it, and yet see how it impacts you.
I like that.
All right, everyone. Thanks, Michael and Stephen and Ed, for your comments. We appreciate those. And Michael, for sharing your one thing. I like the fact that we haven't often had people share their one thing. So thank you, Michael. If anyone else would like to share their one thing, whether you're listening to the replay of this or you're listening to the podcast, you can share it in the comments if you're listening to or watching the replay on social media. If you are listening to the podcast, we welcome you to join us in our Sculpt Your Business from Chaos and Confusion to Confidence and Control Facebook group, and you can share your thoughts and ideas there and your one thing. You can also benefit from others. All right, everyone, thanks so much for being with us today. Just a quick reminder, we are off tomorrow. We will be back Monday morning, 7 a.m.-ish Eastern time for our next episode of Today's Antidote.
Hey, whatever you do, wherever you go, however you have to do it, embrace the renegading you. It is so worth it today and every day.
Yes, it is. All right, everyone, go out and enjoy your day. We will see you soon.